I'm going to present to you an alternative to what Louise presented this morning, an alternative to the business incentives. So if you could put away your cell phone devices, that would be great. Unless you're taking notes, that would be awesome, because this is something that you guys need to know and you need to consider. I'm talking about the homegrown economies, and by homegrown economies, I don't mean the illegal kind. I mean the do-it-yourself economy. I mean local economy, developing your local economy. If there's one takeaway that you should come away from today, which I think we've all sort of proven our point, is that self-employment is job creation. Okay, and we'll just leave it at that for now, and I'll go through and talk about some of the ways that you can get there. So, how have you all in your positions created jobs in your municipalities? Good, raise your hands. Okay, with things that we've been talking about today, we heard that you're spending lots and lots of money giving away valuable resources to businesses. I just heard today on NPR, my drive up here from Delray, that the state of Florida gave a $20 million tax package to Digital Domain. You know how many jobs they created? 0. Why? Digital Domain went bankrupt. Okay? These are traditional methods for a traditional economy. This is a word cloud that someone did from a speech that President Obama gave and in December of 2009. And what do we see? It's pretty obvious what jumps out at you. Small businesses help economic recovery, small businesses jobs. We talk the talk, we talk about supporting small businesses, but and we do that by, Obama has a great record. He's passed 18 tax credits, including hiring credits, including credits for purchasing new equipment. But the problem is that these kinds of incentives and these kind of tax packages do not help the majority of businesses, the 88% of micro businesses that exist in this country. 88% of our businesses, okay, are micro businesses, under 5 employees. And many of them, and this includes the self-employed, 17 million Steve mentioned are self-employed. Steve's not going to hire another person because he gets a tax credit. That's not the way, that's not his business model. These businesses, okay, the tax incentives and these things might help a very, very, very small percentages of small businesses that we consider high growth businesses. But those high growth businesses, only 1% are going to make it and are going to grow to become the next Facebook, the next Twitter. Okay? The micro businesses in this country employ 31 million people, whereas the VCs employ 12 million people. We talked about that. John mentioned that job growth before. I would just argue that we don't want to judge projects on their measure of jobs. We want to consider other projects to have job growth, and that includes developing these local small businesses, such as King City Tire. We have Josie and Jose Rodriguez. They live in King City, California. Anybody know where King City is? It's in the middle of the Central Valley. Unemployment rate, double digits. These guys wanted to, they had a tire store. They wanted to expand. And they wanted to expand, but they couldn't get a loan. They went to a bank, they couldn't get a loan. So somehow they found El Pájaro Development Corporation, which is one of our CAMEO members. El Pájaro gives business advice and business assistance, business mentoring, business counseling. They spent 2 years with the counselor there, okay? And after 2 years of counseling, they were able to expand their business. They opened a car wash, and they created 16 jobs in a city that has double-digit employment. This is happening all up and down the state of California, from San Diego all the way up to Eureka, which is in the very north, almost to the Oregon border, where there's local, what we call micro-enterprise development organizations who are training business owners how to run their business better, how to do a cash flow statement, how to do their financials so that they can actually succeed in what they do. A veterinarian may be a great vet, but has no idea on how to run a business. So these kind of organizations who are CAMEO members, along with our micro lenders who provide loans under $50,000, they make up kind of what we would consider part of the infrastructure that will help your homegrown economy. So as I said before, traditional methods of creating jobs are for a traditional economy. I think we're getting the picture that today's economy, something in the economy has changed. John made a great point that the traditional contract between employer and employee, that no longer exists, or the Gen Y expect it to no longer exist. A shift is needed to a new, innovative, creative, and flexible method, one that harnesses your entrepreneurial spirit to create new businesses and grow new jobs by cultivating your local business sectors. Create your jobs locally. Look what resources are in your localities and find what works and find the things that you could do to help these entrepreneurs create jobs. So we mentioned whose job is it? Well, yes, I'll agree with Steve that it's the entrepreneur, and the way to create a job today is going to be to create one for yourself. However, there's things that you can do to foster a good environment, a good entrepreneurial environment, and for all entrepreneurs. And when I say all entrepreneurs, I want to stress again, I don't mean just that 1%, the sexy 1% we call them, right? Everybody wants a Facebook and a new Twitter and to be the home of the new South by Southwest conference and to create a whole industry on something sexy. We're not talking that. I'm not saying disregard that. You want to cultivate that, but you also want to cultivate the King City Tires. You also want to cultivate your local food truck businesses. You also want to cultivate all these small businesses that make a city and give the city its own character. We'll talk about leadership. We want to talk about make it local. I want to talk about scale-up business technical assistance for micro businesses and the high-growth companies, the gazelles. And I also want to talk about, I'm so glad Ray brought up how his local workforce development board is looking at alternatives, and they're looking at actually job creation, because we have something to say about that. So first, leadership. First thing that needs to happen is that a local municipality, somebody in the leadership has to take a commitment and make a commitment to local economic development and say, we are going to take control over our own destiny. And I'll give the example of the county of Humboldt. And Humboldt, yes, is up in the north of California. It was a big logging town, and when all the logging went away, they were left with one of our shadow economy that wasn't bringing in any tax revenue. So a few insightful leaders got together and they said, we got to do something. We're going to work on developing our own economy. They weren't going to have any luck with business attraction. It wasn't until 2006 that they even had an airport up in Eureka. So a big company, unless you had a little tiny private jet, private plane, you're not very close to a big city. It's not a really attractive place to put a big corporation unless you can kind of encapsulate yourself and isolate. You want to isolate yourself transportation-wise from the rest of the country. The next thing you want to do is you want to hire staff and people who think the way you do, who can implement and who have a vision for this new economy and who will be able to actually implement programs. Another piece of the puzzle that Humboldt actually engaged in was a big public education campaign. If you go in Humboldt County these days, it'll be Humboldt. They have this big Made in Humboldt campaign. There are banners everywhere. There's billboards everywhere. They have a local receipt program, which is really interesting. It's pretty innovative, which tells you how much your purchase is contributing to the local economy. There's all sorts of things that they did to bring, they made it a big deal in Humboldt, and if anybody's interested in getting in touch with the folks from Humboldt, I can put you in touch with them. They made it a big deal for this Made in Humboldt, buy local, do it locally. The other thing you want to do is experiment. Suggestion, take 1% of the business incentives that you might offer to a big corporation. Offer these same things to small businesses. One of the things I think people were offering was free office space. You have extra office space, offer a year free rent to your small businesses. Think differently. What resources do you have that might help small businesses? Pacifica, sorry, most of my examples are from California because I'm from California, but Pacifica, which is just south of San Francisco, just last week held a meeting with the SBA, Kimco Realty. Does anybody know who Kimco Realty is? Kimco Realty, I don't know if you guys know this, but Kimco Realty is offering free rent to small businesses along with a mentoring program for, I think it's a year or 2 years, free rent to small businesses in their empty retail space. So they fill up the mall, as well as hopefully create new businesses, and they're taking more of a long-term approach than just trying to get the highest rent that they can. Pacifica brought together the banks, and they're talking business incubation, and they brought together some, a wide swath of people to kind of come up with a creative thing to create businesses in Pacifica. These are things. The thing that I like about these suggestions is these are things that you can do at little to no cost. Let's talk about talk about some examples of Make It Local. So I'm sure in your area you have a regional cluster. The USDA in the Central Valley of California brought together a bunch of stakeholders to figure out how they're going to create jobs. What they found was that the cattle ranchers were shipping their cattle across state lines for slaughter. Why? There are no slaughterhouses in California, in the Central Valley, and there's no cold storage in the Central Valley. So, they just created 2 more industries in the Central Valley in a place where there is super high unemployment. They have had double-digit unemployment since the recession. Locally made. The cheesemaker in Humboldt County told us that if his neighbors bought 1 hunk of cheese from him every 2 weeks, I mean, everybody buys a hunk of cheese every 2 weeks at least, right? He would be able to create 4 jobs. Okay, the power of local and locally made and locally bought is not small. It's small per individual, but collectively, it's large. And then, of course, we don't want to dismiss developing your competitive industries, your high tech, your clean energy. If you're in Boston, you have medical and biomedical, the biotech field. I don't want to discount that, but that's not our area of expertise. So we'll focus on the small and the local. Scale up business assistance. I mentioned Jose and Rosie Rodriguez. When small businesses get business assistance, the average job creation they create is 2 jobs in addition to their own job over 3 years. Okay? And 80% of client startup businesses survive the first 3 to 5 years, survive and thrive. That's composed to, if you don't get business assistance, it's pretty much 1 out of every 2 businesses go out of business. Okay, so business assistance is super, super, super important, and I want to, people talk about helping small businesses by giving them access to capital. I want to make sure that this business assistance message is put into that access to capital flow, because if a business doesn't get the assistance it needs to be able to be successful, they're not going to, the access to capital doesn't mean anything. Okay, so business assistance is super, super, super important. The other things business needs besides business assistance and loans, small amounts of capital, is the other thing that you could do to help them out is market research. Most small firms do not have access to the kind of market research that large firms spend lots of money on. There is a program in Oregon called MarketLink that does just that for small businesses. It's a state-funded program. We're trying to get some money in California to do that. But if you can provide the kinds of databases and the kinds of assistance to the small businesses that large businesses have access to, you're able to help them increase their markets. And then there's the last thing I want to talk about is the self-employment support through workforce investment. Workforce. In California, CAMEO has piloted a project where our members are working with their local WIBs to provide the business assistance to help people start their own business. Mention that, some people who, if they become unemployed, 44% of unemployed are now long-term unemployed. That means they can't find a job. Their job has either disappeared or someone isn't gonna hire them. They're either a company has gone out of business, or they're a lot of them are older workers who are gonna have a hard time getting hired because their salary requirements are too high. What can they do? So as somebody talked about the unemployed being unemployable. Well, they're not necessarily unemployable. They might be unemployable by a company, but they have valuable skills. It looks different from the unemployable of 20 years ago, 10 years ago. These people who are coming out, who are long-term unemployed, many of them, if you're unemployed, we mentioned if you have a bachelor's degree and you become unemployed, well, in California, you're more likely to remain long-term unemployed if you become unemployed than some of the other populations. So the unemployed populations these days is not purely people who have no skills and can't get a job. It is people with skills. It is people who have experience. And those people are ripe for creating their own job, and we want to do everything we can to foster them. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Self-Employment Assistance Program, which is, does anybody know what that is? Tucked inside the Middle Class Tax Act of last year was a self-employment assistance program. States can apply for, it varies, it's not a competitive grant, it's a formula grant. They can apply for money to bring a self-employment assistance program to their state and to pay for the administration costs of starting or expanding their program. There are about 5 or 6 states who actually have a program now.